On the 20th of February, 1943, in Guadalcanal, part of the Solomon Islands, a blood-curdling uproar shattered the morning calm. 800 troops from the Japanese Imperial Army surged forth from the dense jungle, launching a final, desperate banzai attack. Sergeant James McKinley, clutching his standard-issue M1 Garand rifle, watched as the enemy relentlessly closed the gap, 50 yards, then 40, then a mere 30. The very rifle that had dominated battlefields across Europe suddenly felt woefully inadequate in his grasp, too slow to reload, too limited in its range. Every Marine knew the grim calculus of such encounters. A banzai charge advanced at a terrifying 10 miles per hour, and once the enemy breached the defensive line, survival became a matter of sheer chance, not skill or training. However, on that fateful morning, McKinley wasn't wielding his Garand. Strapped securely across his back was a weapon that the Marine Corps had all but discarded, a World War I-era trench gun, deemed hopelessly obsolete for modern warfare by military experts. This 12-gauge pump-action shotgun hadn't seen significant combat since the muddy trenches of France some 25 years prior. As the Japanese soldiers burst through the final barrier of vegetation, McKinley raised this forgotten relic of the Great War. The events that unfolded would compel the Marine Corps to completely overhaul their jungle warfare doctrine. McKinley himself harbored serious reservations about the trench gun from the moment it had been thrust into his hands 3 weeks earlier. The weapon felt alien after months of relying on the M1 Garand's renowned precision and long-range capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson had made the decision to distribute the shotguns after carefully reviewing casualty reports from previous, disastrous banzai encounters. But McKinley was far from alone in his skepticism. The pump-action mechanism seemed cumbersome and slow compared to the smooth operation of their rifles, and the limited ammunition capacity, a mere 5 shells compared to the Garand's 8-round clip, felt like a significant reduction in firepower. We kindly ask you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The morning of February 20th began much like any other on Guadalcanal. McKinley's squad had established a defensive perimeter along a ridge that overlooked a narrow valley, choked with dense mahogany trees and thick undergrowth. The humidity was oppressive, hanging heavy in the air like a wet blanket, and the familiar sounds of the jungle, chattering birds, rustling leaves, distant artillery fire, created a deceptive sense of normalcy. Private Harrison sat nearby, meticulously cleaning his assigned trench gun with the same unwavering attention to detail that he usually reserved for his rifle. The 19-year-old from Ohio had adapted to the shotgun more quickly than most, but even he couldn't help but question whether 5 shells would be sufficient when the inevitable Japanese onslaught began. The first sign of impending trouble arrived in the manner it almost always did, with a sudden eerie silence. The birds ceased their songs. The insects fell quiet. McKinley had learned to recognize these telltale signs during his 8 long months in the Pacific, and he immediately signaled his men to prepare for imminent contact. Corporal Daniels, positioned 20 yards to the left, raised his hand in acknowledgement and chambered a round in his trench gun. The metallic sound of the pump action seemed unnaturally loud and jarring in the sudden stillness that had enveloped the jungle. Through his binoculars, McKinley spotted movement in the tree line some 400 yards down the slope. Individual figures emerged from the shadows, Japanese soldiers moving with the disciplined precision that invariably preceded every banzai charge. He began to count them. 50, then 70, then well over 100. The enemy formation spread across a front of nearly 200 yards, far wider than any charge his squad had previously faced. Each soldier carried the traditional Arisaka rifle, complete with fixed bayonet, and their synchronized movement suggested that this would be one of the highly coordinated assaults that had repeatedly broken through American lines throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. McKinley's radio crackled with urgent reports from adjacent positions. Similar formations were assembling along the entire ridgeline, indicating a coordinated attack involving at least 800 Japanese soldiers. The sheer numbers alone caused his stomach to clench. His 12-man squad would soon face approximately 60 charging enemies, odds that would have been manageable with proper fields of fire and an adequate supply of ammunition. However, the dense jungle vegetation severely limited visibility to less than 50 yards in most directions, and the trench guns carried only 25 rounds per man, a stark contrast to the 80 rounds typically issued for M1 rifles. The charge commenced with a traditional battle cry that had instilled terror in American forces since the attack on Pearl Harbor. 800 voices screaming in unison created a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath their feet. McKinley watched through his field glasses as the Japanese formation surged forward, moving at the practiced pace that would bring them within effective range in less than 2 minutes. The enemy soldiers advanced in loose formations, skillfully weaving between trees and using the terrain to mass their approach. Their training was evident as they maintained spacing to prevent concentrated fire from disrupting their momentum, and they moved with the desperate energy of men who fully expected to die in the process. Harrison called out the range estimates as the charge rapidly closed the distance. 300 yards and closing fast, Sergeant. The private's voice, despite his youth, carried a steady professionalism, a testament to the rapid maturation that combat demanded. McKinley could now discern individual faces, young men not much older than Harrison, their expressions contorted with the fanatical determination that made banzai charges so effective against unprepared defenders. These were not merely desperate last stands. They were calculated tactical decisions designed to exploit perceived American weaknesses in close-quarters combat. At 200 yards, McKinley gave the order to prepare for engagement. His men swiftly shifted to their designated positions behind fallen logs and natural depressions, each Marine checking his weapon one final time. The trench guns felt woefully inadequate compared to the approaching tide of bayonets and the cacophony of screaming voices. McKinley had witnessed banzai charges before, and he knew that the critical moment would arrive when the enemy reached the 50-yard mark. That was the distance at which rifle accuracy became virtually irrelevant, and survival depended entirely on rapid, devastating firepower at close range. Daniels strategically situated himself at a point where the land naturally narrowed, forcing the oncoming enemy into a corridor less than 30 yards across. This seasoned corporal recognized the tactical edge this location provided, yet he was also acutely aware that concentrated enemy gunfire would rapidly pinpoint his position once the battle commenced. His trench shotgun was loaded with 5 shells, each packed with 9 pellets, a total of 45 projectiles, designed to spread in a cone approximately 10 feet wide at close range. Suddenly, the mathematics of combat seemed more in his favor than when using his rifle. The assault progressed to within 100 yards, and McKinley could discern individual voices amidst the collective war cries. Japanese soldiers stumbled over roots and crashed through the dense undergrowth. Yet their relentless advance never faltered. Some carried satchel charges intended to obliterate American emplacements, while others brandished traditional swords alongside their rifles. The psychological impact was immediate and deliberate. Several of McKinley's newer Marines exhibited clear signs of panic, their hands trembling as they clutched unfamiliar shotguns. At 75 yards, the enemy's formation began to coalesce as the jungle terrain channeled them into predictable routes. McKinley realized that the dense foliage, initially perceived as a disadvantage, was actually working in his favor. The Japanese soldiers were compelled to advance along specific paths, thereby creating natural killing zones that his trench guns could dominate. He adjusted his deployment orders, tasking Harrison and 2 other Marines with covering the primary approach, while Daniels secured the secondary route. The final 50 yards evaporated in mere seconds. McKinley raised his trench gun and disengaged the safety, noticing the distinct weight distribution compared to his rifle. The weapon, which had seemed so antiquated during training exercises, was now about to face its ultimate trial against an enemy tactic that had breached American defenses across the Pacific. Everything he had learned about conventional warfare was about to be rendered inadequate, and his survival would hinge entirely on a forgotten relic from the trenches of France. Stay with us to watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The initial shot shattered McKinley's preconceived notions about modern warfare. As the lead Japanese soldier emerged from the undergrowth at 40 yards, McKinley squeezed the trigger of his trench gun. The 12-gauge shell unleashed 9 lead pellets in a spreading pattern that struck not only his intended target, but also 2 soldiers running alongside him. All 3 men collapsed instantly, their advance halted by a weapon McKinley had dismissed as obsolete just moments before. The pump-action mechanism cycled smoothly despite the humidity, chambering a fresh shell faster than he could have reloaded his M1 Garand rifle. Harrison opened fire from his position near the main trail, and the sound was unlike anything the Marines had previously experienced. The sharp crack of rifle fire was supplanted by the deafening boom of shotguns, each discharge reverberating through the jungle like artillery fire. The psychological effect on the charging Japanese soldiers was immediate and devastating. Men who had trained to withstand rifle casualties now faced a barrage of scattered projectiles, rendering individual accuracy irrelevant. Harrison's second shot struck 4 soldiers in a cluster, the pellets spreading across a cone nearly 15 feet wide at a 30-yard range. The jungle environment, which had frustrated American forces throughout the Pacific Campaign, suddenly became their greatest tactical asset. Dense vegetation that obstructed rifle bullets at long range posed no obstacle to shotgun pellets at close quarters. Mahogany branches that deflected aimed shots merely scattered the spreading patterns of buckshot, creating ricochet effects that struck Japanese soldiers from unexpected angles. McKinley watched in amazement as his third shot penetrated through a screen of leaves and vines that would have stopped his rifle round completely. Striking two enemies he could barely see through the foliage. Daniels had positioned himself at the secondary approach, where the terrain created a natural funnel. His first engagement occurred when 6 Japanese soldiers rounded a cluster of fallen trees at 25 yards. The veteran corporal fired twice in rapid succession, his pump-action shotgun cycling with practiced precision. The 12 shells had been loaded with double buckshot, each pellet roughly the diameter of a .38 caliber bullet. At close range, the effect was catastrophic. The narrow confines of the jungle trail concentrated his fire pattern, and all 6 attackers fell within seconds. The speed of engagement fundamentally altered the nature of combat. McKinley's previous battles had involved careful aim, breath control, and precise trigger squeeze at ranges exceeding 100 yards. The trench gun eliminated those requirements entirely. At distances under 50 yards, pointing became more important than aiming, and rapid fire mattered more than accuracy. His fourth shot was fired instinctively, at a muzzle flash glimpsed through dense undergrowth. The spreading pellets found their target despite vegetation that would have made rifle fire impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson had insisted on distributing 25 shells per man, a decision that seemed wasteful during the initial briefings. McKinley now understood the tactical reasoning. Each shotgun shell contained multiple projectiles, effectively multiplying the firepower of every Marine. His 5-round magazine capacity translated to 45 individual projectiles, comparable to an entire 8-round rifle clip. The additional ammunition allowed sustained engagement without the careful conservation required for rifle cartridges. Harrison discovered another advantage during his 6th shot. A Japanese soldier had taken cover behind a tree trunk that would have provided complete protection from rifle fire. The spreading pattern of buckshot curved around the obstacle, striking the enemy from angles that direct fire could never achieve. The 19-year-old private began using this technique deliberately, firing at angles that sent pellets ricocheting through the jungle canopy to strike targets in seemingly impossible positions. In the labyrinthine jungles of the Pacific Theater, American forces encountered unexpected challenges with their standard-issue equipment. The pervasive humidity, a constant adversary throughout the Solomon Islands campaign, exerted a peculiar influence on the trench guns, diverging from its effects on rifles. While the barrels of rifles demanded meticulous and frequent cleaning to uphold their accuracy, the shotgun's efficacy seemed to flourish in the dense, moisture-laden atmosphere. The very atmospheric conditions that caused rifle bullets to scatter and lose precision at extended ranges appeared to have a negligible impact on the buckshot patterns unleashed at close quarters by the trench guns. Private McKinley, a seasoned Marine, observed that his shotgun was functioning with greater dependability than his M1 Garand had exhibited under analogous conditions during previous patrols. Corporal Daniels, a dedicated Marine, had immersed himself in intensive training with the pump-action mechanism of the trench gun during the 3 weeks since he had been issued the weapon. His muscle memory had now internalized the cycling of shells to such a degree that it occurred without conscious effort, enabling him to maintain a continuous barrage of fire while shifting between defensive positions. The veteran Marine had meticulously calculated that his sustained rate of fire approached an impressive 3 rounds per minute, a pace that significantly outstripped bolt-action rifles and rivaled even semi-automatic weapons. More importantly, each round discharge delivered a devastating impact at the close ranges that characterized the brutal reality of jungle combat. The distinctive sound signature of the shotguns introduced an element of confusion and disarray among the Japanese forces, who were accustomed to the familiar reports of American rifles. McKinley could discern shouted commands emanating from the enemy formation, but the orders appeared disjointed and uncertain, lacking their usual coherence. The attacking soldiers had undergone extensive training to recognize and respond to the sound of M1 Garand fire, utilizing the distinctive ejection of the 8-round clip as a cue to time their advances. However, the continuous boom of the shotguns disrupted their carefully choreographed tactical timing and eliminated the auditory cues that had previously coordinated their assaults. By the time he had fired his 10th shot, McKinley began to realize that the weapon he had initially accepted with reluctance was, in fact, revolutionizing the dynamics of close-quarters combat. Stay with us. The trench gun's effectiveness in jungle conditions exceeded every prediction made by Marine Corps analysts. Dense vegetation that limited rifle engagement ranges to under 50 yards created perfect conditions for shotgun employment. We are grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The weapon that seemed primitive compared to modern rifles was actually ideally suited for the environment where American forces fought their most desperate battles. Private Harrison had expended 15 rounds and discovered that reloading under combat conditions required different techniques than rifle ammunition. Shotgun shells were larger and more awkward to handle, but the process was simpler than managing 8-round clips. The private developed a rhythm of firing 3 shots, topping off 2 shells, and continuing engagement. This technique maintained continuous firepower while ensuring his weapon never ran completely empty during critical moments. The banzai charge that had seemed so overwhelming at 400 yards was fragmenting under the concentrated shotgun fire. Individual Japanese soldiers continued advancing with fanatical determination, but their coordinated formation had dissolved into scattered groups struggling through increasingly deadly terrain. McKinley's squad had discovered that conventional wisdom about infantry weapons was wrong. In the dense jungles of the Pacific, the outdated trench gun had become the most effective tool for stopping enemy assaults, transforming desperate last stands into controlled defensive victories. The aftermath of the February 20th engagement provided Lieutenant Colonel Pearson with data that challenged every assumption about infantry weapon effectiveness in jungle warfare. McKinley's after-action report documented 23 confirmed enemy casualties from a 12-man squad armed with trench guns, compared to average banzai charge results of 4 to 6 casualties per squad using standard rifles. The engagement duration had lasted 3 minutes and 40 seconds, from first contact to enemy withdrawal, significantly shorter than the 8 to 12-minute firefights typical of rifle-based defenses. Most remarkably, the Marine casualties totaled 0 dead and 2 lightly wounded, a reversal of the casualty ratios that had plagued American forces throughout the Solomon Islands campaign. Pearson immediately recognized the tactical implications of these numbers. Standard Marine doctrine called for rifle fire to commence at maximum effective range, typically 200 to 300 yards, in open terrain. Jungle conditions reduced this to 50 yards or less, creating engagement windows of 15 to 20 seconds before enemy forces reached American positions. The M1 Garand's 8-round capacity allowed experienced Marines to fire 6 to 7 aimed shots during this critical period, assuming perfect conditions and no mechanical failures. McKinley's squad had demonstrated the trench guns could deliver 20 to 25 effective shots per man during the same time frame, with each shot producing multiple projectile impacts. The operational analysis extended beyond simple firepower calculations. Pearson's staff reviewed ammunition consumption data from previous engagements, discovering that rifle-equipped squads typically expended 60 to 80 rounds per confirmed enemy casualty during banzai charge encounters. McKinley's squad had achieved a ratio of 12 shotgun shells per casualty, with each shell containing 9 pellets. The effective ammunition-to-target ratio showed dramatic improvement, particularly significant given the logistical challenges of resupplying forward positions in dense jungle terrain. Corporal Daniels provided crucial insights into the weapon's performance under combat stress. His experience with both rifles and shotguns during the same engagement allowed direct comparison of ergonomic factors. The pump action mechanism proved more intuitive under extreme pressure than bolt manipulation or clip changes. Daniels reported that his muscle memory adapted to the shotgun's operation within the first 10 rounds, while rifle proficiency had required months of training to achieve similar reliability. The weapon's operation remained consistent despite the adrenaline surge and fine motor skill degradation that accompanied close combat. Reports from the heat of battle illuminated the unexpected benefits of employing shotguns in close quarters combat. Medical evaluations from the conflict highlighted that Japanese soldiers struck by rifle fire often retained the capacity to continue their assault for a brief period, potentially reaching American lines with bayonets or explosive charges. In contrast, shotgun blasts resulted in immediate incapacitation in an impressive 93% of recorded instances. Navy medical personnel attributed this phenomenon to the multiple wound channels created by the scattering pellets, which disrupted the nervous system far more effectively than a single bullet wound. Harrison's meticulous record of reloading procedures amidst intense gunfire provided invaluable tactical insights that reshaped subsequent training regimens. This Marine had skillfully reloaded his weapon an impressive 7 times during the engagement, maintaining a continuous barrage by coordinating his ammunition changes with nearby comrades. His innovative technique of loading 2 shells after every 3 shots prevented the weapon from running completely dry while ensuring a sustained, maximum rate of fire. This strategy proved superior to the conventional method of completely emptying the weapon before reloading, especially when confronting relentless human wave attacks that offered no natural lulls in the fighting. The psychological impact of shotgun fire unexpectedly emerged as a significant force multiplier, as revealed during post-battle interrogations of captured Japanese soldiers. These prisoners disclosed that the distinctive sound of the pump action mechanism cycling instilled panic within their ranks, as the weapon was linked to American police and gangster films widely circulated in Japan prior to the war. The deafening blast of 12-gauge shells at close range generated auditory shockwaves, disrupting communication and coordination among attacking formations. Several captured soldiers likened the experience to facing thunder guns that appeared to fire continuously without the need for reloading. Pearson's analysis of the terrain further illuminated the effectiveness of the trench gun in the Pacific Theater. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The dense foliage characteristic of most combat zones created natural bottlenecks, concentrating attacking forces into predictable corridors. The shotgun's spread pattern, expanding to approximately 10 feet in diameter at 30 yards, perfectly complemented these terrain-defined kill zones. Paradoxically, the weapon's effectiveness amplified in the jungle environment, defying conventional wisdom that prioritized rifle accuracy and range. Unbeknownst to military strategists, the conditions of jungle warfare inadvertently cultivated an ideal environment for shotgun deployment, despite the weapon's initial design for trench warfare a quarter-century prior. The maintenance demands of trench guns in tropical climates presented unexpected challenges for both Marines and their equipment specialists. While rifle barrels necessitated daily cleaning to maintain accuracy, shotgun performance remained consistent despite accumulating grime. The larger bore diameter and lower pressures generated by 12-gauge ammunition exhibited greater resilience to humidity, mud, and debris that plagued smaller caliber weapons. Harrison reported that his weapon functioned reliably throughout the engagement, even after being submerged in muddy water during the initial positioning phase. The implications of widespread trench gun adoption on the supply chain presented both obstacles and opportunities. 12-gauge ammunition was considerably heavier than rifle cartridges, reducing the number of rounds each Marine could carry. However, the improved effectiveness per round partially compensated for this drawback. Pearson estimated that a Marine carrying 25 shotgun shells possessed firepower equivalent to a rifleman armed with 40 to 50 rounds, while maintaining a comparable total ammunition load. The reduced ammunition requirements also streamlined logistics for units operating far from established supply lines. Training protocols underwent fundamental revisions to integrate shotgun tactics into Marine doctrine. Traditional marksmanship emphasized precision, breath control, and single-shot accuracy at extended ranges. Conversely, shotgun employment necessitated rapid target acquisition, instinctive pointing, and a sustained rate of fire at close quarters. Daniels volunteered to develop training programs capable of preparing Marines for this tactical shift within the limited time frames available between combat operations. Intelligence gleaned from captured documents revealed that Japanese commanders had begun adapting their banzai charge tactics to counter American rifle fire. Enemy formations had learned to exploit the 8-round capacity limitation of M1 rifles, timing their final assaults to coincide with reloading cycles. The continuous fire capability of pump-action shotguns nullified this tactical advantage, forcing Japanese forces to devise entirely new approaches to close-quarters assault operations. By March 1st, Pearson had amassed sufficient data to recommend the immediate expansion of trench gun distribution throughout the 1st Marine Division. His report to higher command included detailed analyses of ammunition consumption, casualty ratio improvements, and tactical employment recommendations. The weapon that military planners had deemed obsolete for modern warfare had proven itself the most effective tool for halting enemy charges in jungle conditions, fundamentally shifting the tactical balance in favor of defending American forces. The monsoon rains that commenced on March 15th exposed the first significant vulnerability in the trench gun's jungle performance. McKinley discovered this during a routine patrol when his weapon failed to eject a spent shell, rendering him temporarily defenseless. While Japanese snipers targeted his position, the pump action mechanism that had functioned flawlessly during the February engagement now struggled against the persistent moisture that infiltrated every seal and crevice. Within 48 hours of continuous rainfall, half the shotguns in his squad experienced intermittent malfunctions, threatening to negate their tactical advantage. Harrison found himself troubleshooting mechanical failures that had never surfaced during training exercises. The steel components of the pump mechanism began exhibiting signs of corrosion despite regular cleaning, and the wooden stock started swelling from moisture absorption. His weapon jammed twice during a night ambush on March 18th, forcing him to transition to his backup sidearm while enemy forces advanced within grenade range. The reliability that had made the trench gun so effective was proving susceptible to environmental conditions that exceeded the weapon's original design parameters. The operational parameters of the trench guns faced significant hurdles due to unforeseen environmental factors. Corporal Daniels took initiative by implementing field modifications, which, although deviating from established Marine Corps maintenance protocols, proved crucial for maintaining operational readiness. Faced with limited resources and spare parts scavenged from damaged weaponry, he meticulously disassembled shotguns. His goal was to pinpoint the components most susceptible to the pervasive humidity. The shotgun's extractor mechanism emerged as the primary point of failure, closely followed by the trigger group assembly and the magazine tube spring. Surprisingly, Daniels discovered that excessive lubrication exacerbated the problem by attracting debris and sand, which then clogged the delicate moving parts. However, the technical challenges transcended mere mechanical reliability and extended into the domain of ammunition performance. Shotgun shells stored in the humid tropical environment began exhibiting signs of degradation within a mere 2 weeks, following the onset of the monsoon season. The cardboard hulls, despite their wax coating, absorbed moisture, resulting in inconsistent chamber pressure and consequently erratic pellet patterns. McKinley's squad experienced 3 catastrophic shell failures during a single intense engagement, with 1 round producing a weak report and pellets that barely reached a distance of 15 yards. These ammunition failures occurred precisely when reliable firepower was most critical for the squad's survival. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson found himself grappling with a tactical conundrum that threatened to undermine the entire trench gun program. Field reports originating from multiple units documented similar reliability problems, with malfunction rates soaring to 23% during extended operations in the wet conditions. The weapon that had revolutionized close-quarters combat was proving unreliable at the very moment when Marines needed it most. Pearson's staff calculated that mechanical failures during enemy contact had already resulted in 4 Marine casualties that might have been averted had the weapons functioned properly. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. If you've made it this far, tell us in the comments where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The innovative solutions devised by experienced Marines like Daniels began to circulate through informal networks, bypassing official channels. Techniques for waterproofing the pump mechanisms involved materials never intended for military use, including beeswax sourced from local communities and petroleum products diverted from vehicle maintenance supplies. While these field expedients improved reliability, they also introduced new problems related to weapon standardization and maintenance procedures. Each squad developed slightly different approaches to keeping their shotguns operational, making centralized training and supply support increasingly difficult to manage. McKinley's efforts to maintain his weapon in accordance with official procedures proved woefully inadequate for the harsh jungle conditions. The standard cleaning kit, designed primarily for rifle maintenance, lacked the appropriate tools for servicing shotgun mechanisms, and the prescribed lubricants attracted moisture rather than repelling it. His weapon required complete disassembly and cleaning after every patrol, a time-consuming process that left Marines vulnerable during periods when they should have been resting or preparing for upcoming operations. The burden of maintenance was becoming a significant tactical liability. Harrison developed a rotation system that ensured at least half of his squad's weapons remained functional at any given time. Marines would alternate between two shotguns, allowing one weapon to dry while the other remained in service. This approach necessitated doubling the number of weapons carried by each unit, creating logistical challenges for patrols operating far from established bases. The additional weight burden reduced ammunition capacity and mobility, partially offsetting the tactical advantages that had made trench guns so effective during initial engagements. The psychological impact of weapon malfunctions proved as significant as the mechanical problems themselves. Marines, who had previously placed unwavering confidence in their shotgun's stopping power, now faced the unsettling possibility of equipment failure during critical moments. McKinley observed increased stress levels among his squad members, who began carrying additional backup weapons despite the added weight. The reliability issues were undermining the morale boost that had accompanied the trench gun's initial success against Banzai charges. Ammunition supply problems further compounded the mechanical difficulties facing shotgun-equipped units. The specialized nature of 12-gauge military ammunition meant that resupply operations required different logistics procedures than those used for standard rifle cartridges. When shipments were delayed or damaged by inclement weather, Marines found themselves rationing shells while enemy activity continued unabated. McKinley's squad operated with reduced ammunition loads for 6 days during late March, forcing them to restrict engagement ranges and avoid patrols that might lead to prolonged firefights. Daniels' unofficial role as the unit's technical expert expanded as other squads sought solutions to similar problems. The veteran corporal found himself conducting informal training sessions on field maintenance techniques, sharing knowledge that had never been formally codified in official manuals. His expertise became so invaluable that Lieutenant Colonel Pearson began consulting him directly on equipment decisions, bypassing normal channels to access practical knowledge gained through first-hand combat experience. The environmental challenges confronting trench guns highlighted broader issues with equipment adaptation for Pacific theater operations. Weapons designed for European conditions required extensive modification to function reliably in tropical climates. The high humidity, temperature extremes, and corrosive salt air created problems that had not been anticipated during peacetime development and testing. McKinley's experience represented a microcosm of the adaptation challenges facing all American forces operating in unfamiliar environments. By the end of March, field reports indicated that properly maintained trench guns retained significant tactical advantages, despite their reliability problems. Units that successfully adapted their maintenance procedures continued to achieve superior results against Japanese charges compared to rifle-equipped forces. However, the weapon's effectiveness now depended heavily on the technical competence of individual Marines, rather than on standardized procedures that could be universally applied. This created disparities in performance between different units based on the experience and ingenuity of their personnel. The crisis forced Marine Corps leadership to choose between abandoning a tactically superior weapon system or accepting the operational complications required to maintain it under combat conditions. Under intense battle conditions, McKinley's team had shown that trench guns could still be quite useful if they had the right backup. However, not everyone had the resources and know-how to make this happen. The crucial factor in deciding whether this largely forgotten weapon from World War I would keep being used by American troops in the Pacific was finding the right balance between how well it worked on the battlefield and how easy it was to keep supplied. The black volcanic sand on Iwo Jima presented unique obstacles, turning the trench gun from a specialist in jungle warfare into a tool for urban combat. McKinley's boots made a crunching sound as his squad moved across the rough ground, heading towards the maze of Japanese bunkers that dominated the island's interior. The thick vegetation that had been typical of Pacific battles for the past 2 years was now replaced by a strange landscape filled with sulfur springs, rocky formations, and concrete fortifications that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. The tactical advantages that had made shotguns so effective in jungle fights now needed a complete rethink in this new setting. The first sign of these changed conditions came during the landing on February 19, 1945. Harrison struggled to keep his weapon working as volcanic ash got into every part of it, despite the protective covers. The tiny particles were even more damaging than the humidity of the jungle, grinding between moving parts and turning into a gritty paste when mixed with lubricants. The first time he tried to pump the action after reaching the beach, he heard a grinding sound, which suggested that the extractor mechanism might be damaged. The weapon that had survived months in tropical conditions was now being defeated by an environment that no Marine had trained for. Stay with us and watch the end of the video to learn more about how the trench guns were used in the Battle of Iwo Jima. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Let us know in the comments where you are from and what you think about this video topic. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson's study of Japanese defensive positions revealed why trench guns might be even more valuable on Iwo Jima than they had been in the jungle. The enemy had stopped using banzai charge tactics and instead built fortified positions that forced American attacks through narrow passages, barely wide enough for one person at a time. These underground tunnels and reinforced bunkers created engagement ranges of just 5 to 15 yards, distances where shotguns would be most effective. The weapon that was originally designed for trench warfare in France was now facing conditions remarkably similar to its original purpose. Corporal Daniels led the first underground assault on March 2nd, when his squad was assigned to clear a tunnel complex that housed about 30 Japanese defenders. The concrete passages were 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, dimensions that made it very difficult to maneuver rifles, but favored the compact size of pump-action shotguns. Daniels carried 40 rounds of double-aught buckshot, specifically chosen for its ability to penetrate in close quarters. Each shell was loaded with 12 pellets, capable of defeating light armor at point-blank range. The confined spaces amplified every aspect of shotgun employment, both positive and negative. The thunderous report of 12-gauge shells in concrete tunnels created acoustic shock effects that stunned enemy defenders and disrupted their coordination. Daniels observed that Japanese soldiers often became disoriented after the first shotgun blast, providing critical seconds for American forces to advance. However, the same acoustic effects proved nearly unbearable for attacking Marines, requiring modifications to standard assault procedures to prevent hearing damage among friendly forces. McKinley discovered that bunker clearing operations demanded different ammunition selection than jungle encounters. Standard buckshot loads proved inadequate against reinforced concrete and steel plate barriers that Japanese engineers had incorporated into their defensive positions. His squad began employing specialized breaching rounds, loaded with hardened steel projectiles designed to penetrate fortified materials. These shells reduced the effective pellet count from 9 to 6 per round, but provided the penetration necessary to engage enemies behind substantial cover. The psychological warfare aspects of shotgun employment proved particularly effective in underground combat. Japanese defenders trapped in bunkers had no escape routes when American forces blocked tunnel entrances with concentrated fire. Harrison reported that enemy resistance often collapsed after the first few shotgun rounds, as defenders realized the futility of fighting in confined spaces against weapons that made individual marksmanship irrelevant. The claustrophobic environment that favored Japanese defensive tactics was transformed into a killing ground where American firepower dominated. Ammunition consumption rates during bunker operations exceeded all previous projections. McKinley's squad expended an average of 60 rounds per cleared position, compared to 25 rounds per engagement during jungle operations. The increased consumption reflected both the intensity of close-quarters fighting and the need to maintain continuous suppressive fire while advancing through interconnected tunnel systems. Supply lines that had struggled to maintain adequate shotgun ammunition in jungle conditions faced even greater challenges supporting bunker clearing operations. Daniels developed specialized tactics for navigating Japanese tunnel networks that incorporated lessons learned from both jungle warfare and urban combat principles. His approach emphasized rapid movement between firing positions using shotgun patterns to clear multiple directions simultaneously. The veteran corporal discovered that ricocheting pellets in concrete passages often struck enemies who believed they had adequate cover, creating lethal effects that exceeded the weapon's design capabilities. The medical challenges of treating shotgun wounds in underground environments complicated evacuation procedures and required modifications to standard casualty care protocols. Navy corpsmen reported that blast effects in confined spaces created injuries unlike those seen in open terrain, with acoustic trauma becoming as significant as projectile wounds. The weapons that had proven so effective at stopping enemy attacks were also creating treatment challenges that strained medical resources. Harrison's battlefield experiences, particularly in clearing fortified enemy locations, underscored the critical need for synchronized application of diverse weaponry. Though shotguns were highly effective in close-range engagements, their limitations became apparent when facing distant enemy emplacements or heavily fortified obstacles. To overcome these challenges, his unit pioneered integrated combat methods that combined the precision of rifles for long-range suppression with the devastating force of shotguns for final assaults, thereby leveraging the strengths of each weapon while mitigating their respective weaknesses. The unique volcanic terrain presented maintenance issues distinct from those encountered in jungle environments, but equally challenging. The presence of sulfurous compounds in the atmosphere accelerated the corrosion of metallic components, while the abrasive nature of volcanic ash caused rapid wear on moving parts. McKinley's firearm required thorough cleaning after each mission, making replacement parts essential supply items that required prioritized distribution from support units. Intelligence gathered on the battlefield revealed that Japanese commanders were actively modifying their tunnel defense strategies to specifically counteract the use of American shotguns. Enemy troops began constructing extended tunnels that exceeded the effective range of shotguns and incorporating barriers designed to disperse pellet patterns. These adaptations compelled American assault teams to innovate new counter-strategies to regain their advantage in subterranean warfare. By the middle of March, casualty reports definitively showed that units equipped with shotguns experienced notably fewer casualties during bunker-clearing operations compared to those armed with rifles. McKinley's team, for instance, participated in 14 separate tunnel assaults, suffering no fatalities and only 3 minor injuries, statistics that stood in stark contrast to the typically high casualty rates associated with attacks on fortified positions. The weapon that had initially revolutionized jungle warfare was proving equally transformative in the urban combat setting of Iwo Jima. The demonstrated success of trench guns in bunker operations resulted in a surge in demand that surpassed the available supply allocations. Lieutenant Colonel Pearson was forced to ration the weapons among various units, each asserting operational priority for their specific missions. This once overlooked relic from World War I had become one of the most coveted weapons in the Pacific theater. Its effectiveness validated across diverse combat environments that its original designers could never have foreseen. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic.